The Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the Rabbinical Assembly, and Temple of Aaron. Today is the first day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 20th of Tammuz, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Sunday, July 5th, 2026. We will read Parashat Matot Maseh this coming Shabbat. Let's begin. Parashat Matot. We will begin learning Parashat Matot for our week, our Parsha of the week. This will be our last Parsha of the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to Maaseh because of the triennial Torah reading, but it gives us opportunity to focus on Matot, which will be very interesting. The major topic in our verses in the triennial Aliyah of the first day of the week, the first Aliyah of the Torah portion, which is Numbers 30, verse 2 through 9, is the topic of vows. That's right, vows. Nedarim in Hebrew. The Torah is going to talk about extensively. So let's explain what the verses explain about these things called vows. Number one, what is a vow? Now, the Torah doesn't actually explain fully what a vow is. We actually have to rely on the Mishnah and the Talmud to understand at least how the rabbis understood what a vow is, and certainly also to understand what is the difference between another rabbinic idea that's also mentioned in these verses, which is a shevuah, or an oath, right? They seem to be very similar. What's the difference between a vow and an oath? A neder and a shevuah. Wait, what is the difference between these two? So let's talk about nedarim first, because I think the Parsha mentions these a lot more explicitly. Nedarim, vows, in general, are thought of by the rabbis are forbidding a particular object that is permitted to you originally, right? So something that is permitted, usually on something that is permitted. So, for example, this peanut butter sandwich, right? I'm going to make a vow that that can't use this particular peanut butter sandwich, right? And the vow is located upon and happens upon, is activated upon the peanut butter sandwich, upon a particular physical object, okay? Now, one thing that's interesting about neder is you can actually also forbid yourself something that is, or make something forbidden to you that is actually already forbidden, so that you're liable for an extra korban or an extra sacrifice if you do end up using that thing, right? For example, you can make a vow saying this piece of chametz is forbidden to you on Pesach, so that if you do eat this particular piece of chametz, not only have you violated Pesach, but then you violated the vow also. So this is in general what a vow is. Always, and what's important to remember is it always falls upon an object, on something not yourself. This is very different. Well, not very different, but different in general thought of, by the rabbis, of a shevuah, or an oath. An oath, on the other hand, is something in which I forbid myself from doing, right? So the oath falls upon. So let's even take the same idea. I am forbidden to eat a peanut butter sandwich, right? So not only am I forbidden to eat a particular peanut butter sandwich, but I am forbidden in general from eating peanut butter sandwiches. I can even make an oath on a particular object. I forbid myself from eating that peanut butter sandwich, right? The oath, if it was a vow, right, that vow would be located on the peanut butter sandwich itself and make that peanut butter sandwich itself forbidden to you. Right? But for the oath is located upon the person. So I am forbidden to eat that peanut butter sandwich. All right. Now, in that case, right, it's basically the same thing. There are some differences halachically, but the structure is what is important, right? A shevuah is upon oneself, an oath is upon oneself, while a neder, a vow, is upon a particular object. So that's probably the clearest explanation I can give of the difference between a neder and a shevuah. Of course, this isn't really located within the Torah itself, but there it is. Okay, some other details about this to discuss. Vows, according to the Torah, can be uprooted. They can be uprooted specifically only for women, and specifically women that are under the age of adulthood, which in Judaism is under about 12. Of course, they also say, 11 in some cases as well, but I don't want to get into that level of detail. But basically, if you're a woman that's under 12, and you're not considered you're able to at least understand the words and know what you're doing, it would be considered that your vows can be your vows are then considered to be actual vows that you actually make, right? A minor can't really make a vow. But if they make a vow and they're not married yet or even engaged yet, then their father can annul their vow. And if they're married or engaged, then the husband can annul their vow. Actually, there's a nice, interesting intermediate stage where if they are an engaged woman but not married, then actually both the father and the husband have to annul the vow. Now, this is actually where the Torah sort of ends with these laws, but it's interesting to note that the rabbis added another way to release one from vows, and that's called hatarat nedarim within the rabbinic idea. And we don't find this anywhere in the Torah. Actually, the Talmud itself notes that this practice is not found anywhere within the Torah. In Chagiga, in Tractate Chagiga, I'm trying to find the source here. Chagiga 10a, I knew I wrote it down. Chagiga 10a, it specifically says that there's not a real source for this within the text itself, and that this idea of this ritual actually floats in the air, meaning it has no source. But on the other hand, it's Torah Moshe Sinai, right? It's Torah that comes specifically from Moses in Mount Sinai, and this is an expression usually used saying we must follow this. It's extremely important. It's the Torah, even though it has absolutely no source within the Torah. This is most famously used with laws about tefillin and what color they need to be and everything like this. So it's something that the rabbis obviously held to extremely strongly, but isn't located, at least manifestly, within the Torah itself. Now, what is this idea of hatarat nedarim? Hatarat nedarim is that rabbis or sages can actually exempt a person from an oath, right? They can permit one that just as one becomes bound by an oath, a rabbi can release a person from a particular, vow, not oath, vow. And this is called hatarat nedarim. Now, the way the rabbis did this was to try to legally or find a way that the vow wasn't actually activated in the first place, that there was some kind of problem or some kind of issue with the way in which you said the vow originally, and so once they can find a loophole around the vow, they can invalidate the vow. And this is usually how vows are invalidated by rabbis, at least according to the Talmud. These laws are extremely, extremely complex, but I think what's important to understand here is that the rabbis sort of added another way that vows can be released. And I think the big question that comes is, especially understanding this as conservative Jews and being a little bit skeptical that this came from Moses on Mount Sinai, is to understand why do the rabbis feel so heavily the need to sort of add this in or put this in, that it's not just and I think a simple reason is, well, if you're a man, your vow, and you're an adult man, your vows could not be, once you made a vow, it could not be ever released. And so what happens if you made a vow that was really dangerous for yourself or not good in some way? There was no way that it can possibly be released. So I think this was important, and the rabbi saw that this was like an important need for the system to actually work. But obviously much more thought is required with this. We're going to have a fun time learning this subject. And I'm sure we'll go on to other subjects. We'll study the second Triennial Aliyah tomorrow. All right. Mishnah Torah. Hilchot Kriyat Shema. The laws of the recitation of the Shema. We're going to continue now with a new chapter of the recitation of the Shema, the laws of the recitation of the Shema. We're on chapter 3. We're going to learn the first two halachot today. So the first halacha goes like this. Hakoret Shema rochetz yadav b'mayim kodesh yikra. One who recites the Shema should wash his hands with water before reciting it. Now, it's important to understand this. This does not mean that once you get to the Shema and Tefillah, you should leave the synagogue or wherever you're davening and wash your hands and then come back and do it again. But rather, this is about making sure that your hands are clean before you recite the Shema. So really what you should be doing is washing your hands before you pray, so that you make sure that your hands are clean. Now, if your hands are already clean, there's no schmutz on it or anything, or they don't have anything smelly or bad on it, then it's perfectly fine to daven the Shema. Under one condition. It's generally thought of that if we have touched recently and haven't washed our hands since, a part of our body that is normally covered, what we would call our private parts, then what we should do is wash our hands. And our hands need to be washed. So they might not look dirty, but if you've touched a private part of some sort of yours, then you should wash your hands. So important to note that for men, this extends for people in general. This extends much beyond our private parts. I would say any part of our body that is usually covered, but we usually traditionally cover with clothing. If we've touched it, we should probably wash our hands before reciting the Shema. And in general, this is done before tefillah in general, right? Because we usually say Kriyat Shema as part of our whole entire prayer service. Now, what happens if the time for the Shema has arrived? And remember, for the Rambam, he has a unique opinion here that it's specifically early in the morning at a specific time is when we recite Shema, right before Netzachama, right before sunrise. What happens if you can't find water? And he says you should not delay your recitation, and even if your hands are dirty, you should still say the Shema. Why? Because for the Rambam, the time is passing extremely quickly because you have to say it at this particular time. Right? I'm not sure if this would be the same for us today. Most of us don't follow this law that the Shema must be said right before Netzachama. This is a minority opinion. Most authorities believe that, yes, ideally we should say it right before Netzachama, but really from the outset, most people just try to say it within the first 3 hours of the day. In that case, most people can find water. So in our day and age, find water before you say the Shema. Make sure your hands are clean. Obviously, okay, maybe you're camping or you're out in a crazy situation in the wilderness. Okay, things might be different in that regard, but then a lot of things will be different. So in our 99% of cases, we should be able to find water. It should be fine. Okay, halacha 2. Ein korin lo bebeit ha-merchatz. One should not recite the Shema in a bathhouse or a latrine or a bathroom, even if there's no fecal matter in it, right? Even if at this particular time no one's gone to the bathroom there's no you know what I mean. There's no excrement or urine in the bathroom at this particular time. Now, this is only in a case, though, importantly, as he's going to say in the next halacha, which we're not going to get to yet, but hey, why not foreshadow a little bit? Once the bathroom has been used, if it is a completely new bathroom that has never been used before, then it's still not considered a bathroom yet in order to forbid reciting the Shema in that particular place. It doesn't become this because just by designating it that way, but rather it has to be used that way. And I think we can understand this. Once a bathroom used, it kind of always has that little bit of smell in it, right? I think in that regard. So he also says, not in a graveyard or next to a corpse, right? So in general, we need to distance ourselves at least 4 amot, which is about 6 feet away from a corpse or a graveyard in order to recite the Shema. All right, we don't do that either. Very important. This is not because of the dirtiness, God forbid, of the dead, and not because of tuma, because we're all actually impure so this doesn't really matter. But this is more about what Brachot 18a says, that this is about mocking the dead, right? Because the dead can't do mitzvot, so we're not allowed really to do mitzvot around the dead, like, say, the Shema, because that's sort of mocking them that they're not, that look how I can do it and you can't. Okay, very interesting idea. So it's in general, I wouldn't say the Shema inside of a graveyard. So anyway, so that's why he says 4 amot is enough to because if it was really about smell or something getting near you, 4 amot wouldn't be enough. It would be more tactile than that. But 4 amot is enough that you're in your personal space, you're away from sort of the space of the dead in that regard. And what he says actually here is if you do recite the Shema in one of these improper places, like either in a bathhouse or a bathroom that's been already used, or in a graveyard or near a corpse, you actually have to go and recite the Shema again, right? And this is the idea of sveik daraita lahachmir, right? That when we have a doubt about whether doing a Torah mitzvah, right, we have to be extra stringent and we have to be punctilious with this. So very important. Interestingly enough, we've seen in other places, I actually said, I think in my previous, maybe yesterday's class, that we shouldn't say the Shema twice. So what about that idea of the fact that you can't say the Shema twice, that you might look like an idolater? I think in this case, what Rambam is saying is that this is much stronger. You really probably did not fulfill reciting the Shema when you recite it in the mitzvah, when you recite it in one of these smelly places. So therefore, you still have to do it again. I'm pretty sure, he'd probably say, don't say it so loud that other people hear it, so the people think you're an idolater. But again, I think this is also an interesting question to look in more fully if we were doing more research in the Rambam. But halacha lamaseh, practical halacha, I think it's pretty understandable. Menorat HaMaor. We'll continue this new section that is about how affliction happens to the many, to the whole entire Jewish community, and what it means in a profound sense. We still haven't gotten to suffering yet. We're still talking about how important the Jewish people are, how important the Torah is, and again, also we can appreciate how good we have it and how important we are. So this is an important first step in terms of then appreciating what suffering actually means and tshuva in order to do repentance. The Menorat HaMaor continues. Remember, we've been talking about this idea of how the world is sort of created for humanity, and humanity is created for the Jewish people. And it's continuing along this vein. This is actually a continuation of the Midrash Rabbah itself that is based upon. So the conversation, at least in the Midrash Rabbah, continues on and actually says, Rabbi Benaiah said, the world and everything in it was created only in the merit of the Torah, as it is stated, the Lord founded the earth with wisdom, Proverbs 3:19. So I always like to say that the verses that the Midrash quotes are keys to the meaning of the Midrash. And it's important to understand sort of the context of what these verses actually are talking about. Here in this case, we have Proverbs 3. So in order to understand this, you actually have to look at what Proverbs is actually talking about here. It's hard to understand this just from the context of itself. The entire passage in Proverbs talks about how we should constantly be clinging to God, constantly be clinging to Torah, don't fall asunder from it, and how beautiful the Torah is, that we should not leave it. Some of the most famous passages we know, Darchei Noam v'kol netivotei shalom, is verse 17, and then verse 18, Eitz chaim hin l'machazikim ba v'tom chayam shar. Right, she is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her, and happy to those who hold her fast. I think if you go to shul, you know these lines. We say them right before returning the Torah, and then right after that, Hashem b'chochma yisad aretz konen shamayim b'tivuna. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by understanding He established the heavens. B'dato toma nivka'us chokim yarfu tal. By His knowledge, the depths were broken up, and the clouds dropped down dew. And so, therefore, He says, don't depart yourself from the Torah. And so I think when going back to the teaching from the Midrash here, I think we can understand sort of what is being said in a much clearer way. It's not only that the Torah is created for the sake of Torah, rather it's in the merit of what Torah is. And so the belief really is that like the world is designed based on the blueprint of the Torah, right? That the Torah itself is the key to understanding actually how the world itself works. And so that's why we need to learn Torah and not desist from it, because it is the blueprint underlying all of creation. So that's what Rabbi Benaiah is really saying. I think interpreting also Rabbi Benaiah's his passage back also on other teachings, also on Israel and what was said about the Jewish people, also helps us gain a little bit better understanding of what it means that the world was created for the sake of humanity or the sake of the Jewish people. It's not for this necessarily that they're the only thing that matters, but sort of they play a key role in understanding why things happen in the world in the way they do, and therefore they should be paid attention to. So that's Rabbi Benaiah. Rabbi Barachia says, no, in the merit of Moshe, as I said, he saw the first portion for himself. This is Deuteronomy 33:21. Of course, if you look at this verse and you say, what is he talking about? And what does it mean that the world is created for the merit of Moshe? What's so special about Moshe? Obviously, we know that Moshe brought the Torah down and gave the Torah to the Jewish people, but like that could have also given through somebody else. And like now Moshe's gone. So now that Moshe's gone, like, what's the point of the world? If the whole entire world was created for the sake of Moshe, what's the point? Again, once you look at the context of this weird verse, you start to understand a little bit more of what is being said here. So this comes from Deuteronomy 33:21, a very interesting place at the end of the Torah where Moses is blessing the different tribes of Israel before he passes away. And one of the weirdest blessings is what he gives to God. God, he says, and of God, he said, blessed is he that enlarges God. He dwells as a lion. And we usually say Gad in Hebrew, so I'm not talking about God here, but God as in one of the tribes. He dwells as a lion and tears the arm with the crown of the head. Okay, pretty cool, pretty metal so far. What about the next verse, though? The next verse is kind of the strange part. And this is the verse he actually quotes in the Midrash. And he provided the first part for himself because there the portion of a lawgiver was reserved. And he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgment with Israel. Okay, and that actually makes it a little bit clearer than the Hebrew itself is really confusing. So what does this have to do with anything? And what is going on here? Well, a little clue to this actually is in our parashah this week. It's in Parashat Matot when God, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, but led by God, says, we want to dwell on the east side of the Jordan River. The land is better here for the herding of the cows and everything like this. And Moses accedes their request only, of course, if they go in and fight and conquer the land of Israel, then they can go back and settle the land on the east side of the Jordan River. So this is what this is referring to, and he provided the first part for himself, meaning they were the first tribe who saw a piece of land and said, this is where I want to live. Right, so that is given as like sort of an honor for him that he said, "This is where I want to live." And moving very quickly to do so. Now, this, if you read the biblical context of this part itself, it seems because this is really good pasture land for the cows, and that's why they choose it for sort of economic reasons. But actually, it's sort of being reinterpreted, at least by Moshe, at least according to Rashi and Rambam's interpretation of this particular verse, in the words that come next. Ki sham chelkat mochokek safun, right? Which in the translation given in Sfaria here is because there the portion of a lawgiver was reserved. According to Rashi and Rambam, this actually refers to Moshe himself. Moshe is buried. Remember, Moses was not buried in the land of Israel. Moses dies on Mount Nebo, which is in the territory of God. So Moses' grave actually ends up being in God. Now, no one exactly knows where Moshe's grave is, but we know that it is in the territory of God, which is why it says safun here, that it's still hidden in some ways, or reserved, hidden, something like that. But that's one of the merits of God, that God lives in the territory where Moshe is buried. So this is obviously considered a major zechut and a major merit. So now I think, and of course the last part of it, we might as well go through it. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. What does it mean? Well, God went with the Jewish people and conquered the land of Israel with the Jewish people, and then actually fulfilled his promise and came back, and they came back and lived in God and the east side of the Jordan River. So going back to the text itself, it's always important now that we've understood the verse in full context to go back to what Rabbi Barachia is saying here in the merit of Moshe, as it is stated. So Rabbi Barachia said, in the merit of Moses, as it is stated, the world was and everything in it was created only in the merit of Moses, as it is said. He saw the first portion for himself. I think what this possibly can mean is it's created in the merit for those who seek to draw close to those who are righteous and give the law, those who jump on an opportunity and say, this is where I want to live because of the spiritual quality of this particular place, to live close to the great tzaddikim, or the great righteous people who give Torah and revelation to the Jewish people. That the earth consists on this desire and this need to draw close to the people who are righteous. And again, this talks about how precious, again, righteous people, especially people like Moshe Rabbeinu, truly are, as a great model of that, as the lawgiver of the Jewish people. So again, Torah, Moshe, lawgivers, how precious this world is, how much if we draw close to it, and how we should never desist from it, how we should choose our locale of where we live based on it. This is all such important teaching, and also will sort of, again, be a sort of a long-term introduction to contextualize suffering after we understand and appreciate how beautiful a tradition and inheritance we have as the Jewish people. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions, and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.